I saw a post on Facebook and it kind of just like stuck with me or whatever because you see everyone with new cars around them. And I saw somebody, they said, I had to buy a new car recently. It was 17% interest. I'm never going to be able to buy a house. It was a post about not being able to afford housing for millennials. And I'm not trying to sound like a boomer, but you had to buy a new car. You had to. People in the US, this is just in general now, this has nothing to do with generation, but, well, it kind of does, but that's not my point. We live in a throwaway culture with vehicles where people are just like, oh, it has 140,000 miles. Ew, icky, get rid of it. And people just don't, like, they have this attitude that a car, it's like an iPhone. And it's like, I mean, it's like you see, it is so normal to have a car note in this culture, in this society. And people are just, they're so entitled and spoiled to think that they need a luxury vehicle. And I'm saying that while I'm in a freaking $5,000 Lexus GS 300, but I paid for it in cash and it's 20 years old almost. So, I mean, when I bought this vehicle, I paid for it outright in cash. I didn't go into debt. And I've always driven older vehicles, but like people, I hear commonly, well, I need safety and reliability. It's not, it's not worth, I can't drive an older vehicle because they're not safe. If we get into a crash, I wouldn't put my children into that 2010 vehicle. You are so entitled and spoiled if you think that way. In my personal opinion, like, go to other developing countries and see what they're driving. Because if you go, I'm telling you, you go to Central America, they're still driving like 1993 Hondas, and they're fine. Statistically, there's always a risk of accident anytime you leave your house. Auto accidents, but it's just there's a certain risk. But regarding safety, okay, look, if I was driving like a 1988 Mercury Topaz, okay, I probably wouldn't want that either. But what I'm trying to say is, about the late 90s on, it really hasn't changed that much. The only difference is everyone drives gigantic trucks and SUVs now that they honestly don't need, which might increase your odds of like getting like killed in an accident. But we have a lot more nanny features now, like blind spot assist this and backup camera this and all this automatic this and touchscreen this. But what I'm trying to say is, if you go back to the late 1990s, any car from about the late 90s, early 2000s to like mid 2000s, like 2010-ish, they all have anti-lock brakes, they all have crumple zones, they all have multiple airbags on board, they all have traction control. Well, most manufacturers had traction control that were worth a damn. They all have all these standard features. So the safety argument to me is not compelling enough. And I mean, you're just trying to justify going into debt for a vehicle. And, it's just not, to me, it's just not a wise use of money. I've driven older cars and I'm still alive. And I've had, a 93 car with my first, I had a 1993 Acura Integra that I drove around for 5.5 years. I learned to fix that car myself. I had a 2004 Acura. After that, I have a 2005 now, and I'm fine. I think people just are spoiled with luxury. But the funny part is they do this, and then they wonder why they can't afford anything when they have a car payment that's $450 a month. It's like, hey, wake up. If you're wasting all your money on that, of course you're not going to have anything disposable. But the bigger problem than that is, I made a video about this, is nobody does any maintenance on their cars. So they just assume an older car is crap, but every car turns into crap if you don't maintain it. So you're just perpetuating this cycle of having to get a new vehicle because you think you can just drive it without doing anything to it. Like, even if it's a newer car, you should still change your filters, fluids, and do things like spark plugs and, check suspension parts. But nobody does it. They just do oil changes, and then they act like it's a big piece of crap because after 11 years, it needs $1,500 in miscellaneous repairs, and it's just so silly. But the idea that you need a new car, I needed a new car. No, you wanted a new car. I don't care if you drove the biggest hoopty. You could have gone on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist and got you a little 2002 Honda Accord for like $3,000. Okay, you could have. You didn't have to go into debt to buy a new car. Nobody had to buy a new car. That is completely asinine. I don't care what your finances are, and your credit must be horrible if you're doing 17% interest in a car. You must have gone to like JD Baryder or something. But and I understand things can be tough for people, but like, you could either keep your hoopty on the road a little longer while you save up to put like a down payment on a car. But I don't know how you're getting financed at 17% interest. Like that's just dumb. But anyway, I mean, you could get a $5,000 car, a $6,000 car, a $7,000 car, and it's completely fine. But people, they don't want to drive a 15-year-old vehicle because it's icky. When I got a 2004 Acura, it felt like a new car in 2018 because I was so used to driving like early 90s stuff. It felt like a new car, the refinement. I think with cars now, you're going to see a point where I feel like they peaked. I feel like they peaked in the 2010s, like the early part of the 2010s, and even a little bit before that for some manufacturers, like 05, 04, 5, 6, 7, 8, that kind of era. And now it's just kind of the decline because with all the onboard electronics and the CAFE stuff, they're not going to last as long as the older vehicles. Everything has turbos on it now just to meet efficiency standards that are, they're being squeezed by the government. And I'm not saying like, there's anything wrong with seeking for progression in some ways, but like, I would be fine if Honda just like indefinitely kept producing the K24 engine. Like, why, if it ain't broke, I don't understand why we have to fix it. But we live in this consumerist bubble where they have to create market and hype to sell you something, kind of like the newest iPhone. And at the same time, they're under a lot of pressure from the government, so they can't produce certain things anymore. But like, I really honestly wish like we could just have like new older vehicles where they just kept producing like a 1998 Acura Integra GSR. Like, I wish that was a thing, like how Central America got B13 Sentras for like freaking 25 years, and they just kept producing the body style from like 93 to like 2015. I personally don't care about the safety upgrades and anything. I want something simple that I can work on myself, that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, with a simple, robust design. But yeah, the concept that you need a new vehicle, like nobody put a gun to your head and said you needed to buy a new vehicle. You could have got a $6,000 car, and you could have even financed a $6,000 car and then expected to maybe go into debt like a $1,500 max on miscellaneous expenses if something broke when you first bought it. But a new car, it's mind-blowing, people's rationalization of going into debt over this stuff. But that's the end of my rant. Later.